In this video I will summarize very shortly the basic facts about the imperative form in Somali. And the imperative is the form that is used to express commands, orders, or requests, like, look, come here, help me, explain this. And in English, the imperative form is equal to the base form, the basic form of the verb, also called the infinitive. This means that the imperative has no specific ending in English. And that is actually true also in Somali. In Somali, the imperative is also equal to the base of the verb, or the verb stem, the stem of the verb. That is the part of the verb that is not an ending. So the imperative in Somali, just like in many other languages, has no ending. So in the present tense we have, for example, hesa, and in the imperative the present tense ending a is not there, and nothing else is there instead. So we only have the stem, hes. And in English it doesn't matter how many persons you want to address or how many persons you want to direct this request or command to. But in many languages you have to make a distinction between an imperative that you want to use addressing one person and an imperative that you want to use addressing several people. And this is true for languages like French and German, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, and many other languages, that you have different imperative forms depending on who you are addressing or how many people you are addressing. For example, in Spanish you have an imperative that means sing, and if you address one person you use the singular form canta, and if you address several people you have to use a plural form, canten. So how are these two forms, how do they look in Somali? Well, we already said that the Somali imperative has no ending. That was a little bit simplified because that is true only for the singular form of the imperative. That is the form that you use when you address one person. So if you want to give a command or an order to one person, you drop any kind of ending and you have just the stem hes. But if you want to address several persons, you have to add a plural ending to the imperative. And the plural ending of the imperative is always a. So in this case, the imperative that you use for several persons is hesa. But this simple situation only holds for some of the verbs, or a large part of the verbs. There are some verbs that are a little bit more complicated, and there are verbs with a stem that ends in a vowel. And if the stem of the verb ends in a vowel, you have to insert a y, a written y, a y, between the stem and a following vowel in the ending. So, for example, the verb do has this y in the present tense form, sameya, and also in the imperative plural, sameya. But the y is not there in the imperative singular, because it does not belong to the stem. It's just inserted in order to avoid two vowels next to each other. So the imperative singular is just same. And there is another type of verbs that has a stem that ends in ad or just d or t, which is a suffix that many verbs have. And this suffix disappears in the imperative singular, or it's replaced by an o. So, for example, the verb buy, where the present tense has this suffix ad, ipsada, and this ad is replaced in the imperative singular by an o. So we get ipso. And in the imperative plural, the ad is back there again. So the imperative plural has the same stem as the present tense, or practically, most other forms. So it's just the imperative singular that is quite peculiar, whereas the imperative plural is actually regular. There is not very much, there is nothing strange about the imperative plural. So here the strange form is the imperative singular. So we have basically three different ways of forming the imperative in Somali. And this is largely why Somali is said to have three verb clauses or three conjugational clauses. Conjugation, that's the inflection of verbs. So we could also say three inflectional clauses. So Somali verbs are traditionally divided into three clauses or groups, and one of the major reasons for dividing them is actually the imperative, because the imperative differs between these three clauses. That's the end regarding the imperative, but there is of course more to say about verb inflection, and there is a little bit more to say about the three conjugations, the three different conjugational clauses.